Our next in-person mastermind is coming up this fall, and we're heading to Vegas. We're kicking off this mastermind with an in-person tour at Zappos downtown Las Vegas campus, where you'll learn their strategies behind company culture, core values, employee engagement, and customer service. Looking outside the legal industry for business concepts and strategies allows you to gain fresh perspectives and innovative solutions that can be applied to improve and differentiate your firm's operations. Following the tour are the mastermind hot seats. Every attendee has the opportunity to dive deep into their business obstacles with their mastermind group and coach. We believe that nothing beats working on your firm in person, so join us in Las Vegas on November 7th and 8th. This is your chance to break through barriers, spark new ideas, and accelerate your law firm's success. Limited spots are available. Visit maxlawevents.com for full event details and to grab your ticket today.
Run your law firm the right way. This is the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. Your hosts, Jim Hacking and Tyson Mutrux. Let's partner up and maximize your firm. Welcome to the show.
Welcome back to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. I'm Jim Hacking.
And I'm Tyson Mutrux. What's up, Jimmy?
Tyson, my friend, we are going to be talking about immigration today, running an immigration law firm, and lots of things that I like to think about. So I'm excited.
You were steepling. You were doing the steepling thing as you were saying that. So I can tell you're excited. Yeah, and it's a Gildian. It's someone that we like talking to. Jose de Wit. Jose, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Great. We're great, Jose. So tell everybody about you and your law school experience and how you came to own a law firm.
It was a roundabout process. So I went to law school in the San Francisco Bay Area at Berkeley, and then I stuck around there for a couple of years. I started out at a big firm and then got into immigration by accident. I wound up in Florida for personal reasons. I thought it was going to be a short stay. So immigration, you can practice immigration in any state as long as you're licensed in any jurisdiction. So I thought I'd pick up a little bit of work while I was here. And one case turned into another, and then that turned into a book of business. And then I worked at a few firms as an associate, and a couple of years ago decided to make a break for it and start my own firm.
So has there anything that's surprised you from like what you thought it was going to be like compared to like what it's actually like?
Everything. So yeah, in my probably this is not unique for anybody who's done this, but in my head I've been a perpetual associate. I'm used to grinding and pumping out the cases, and I'm good at it. And so it's going to be more of that, except I'm going to make more money at it. And maybe there's going to be some small percentage on the top of like miscellaneous admin work and occasional marketing. And it's been the inverse, right? So that was surprising to me. When I started the firm, I didn't have the benefit. I wasn't plugged into Max Law, for instance, or any of the other resources that I lean on now to understand what it's like to run a firm. So I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And also I was surprised by how much I would like the running a firm aspect of it. I didn't see that coming. Everybody in my family they're all entrepreneurs. I was the black sheep, so to speak, in the sense that I was the only bookworm. They always laughed at me because I was the one who wasn't practical minded and was just good at just sitting down and figuring out cases and writing, but just not a people person, not a get things done person. And once I was in that seat, I was shocked at how much I liked it and that I actually wasn't half bad at it.
What were those first 6 months like, Jose? How did you get clients? Was it just you? How did you sort of set things up?
It was just me for maybe the first month or two. And then very quickly I hired one VA and one in-person paralegal, neither of whom worked out in the end. It was good to go through that experiment of hiring and figuring that out early on, because at least I'd made a few mistakes and was ready to get into the hiring process with eyes wide open once we actually really did need people and were ready to grow a little bit more. And so I was the only attorney. I still am the only attorney, really. At first, I was lucky in that a friend from law school, he's general counsel at fairly large hospitality company, and I already had some cases lined up with them before I left my old job, so I knew from the start that would be at least some source of revenue. They were my only client at first, and from there on, it was slow going, but that one client kept us afloat for a little bit. The two partners I worked for a few jobs before I started the firm, they split right before I went on my own, and I shared office space with one of them. So that was a really that was good at first. Like I had cheap rent from her, and use of the copier and all those things that I wasn't ready to, all those costs I wasn't ready to absorb on my own yet. And she fed me some work, at least some contract work when she had overflow. So that was helpful also.
There are things like that it is really something that helps out young lawyers. That, I mean, I know I had the benefit of a lot of that whenever I first started out. So like there are things like that where like just like use of a copier is just it can be like such a really big thing. Are there what are some tips or some advice you might give to some young lawyers or older lawyers that are considering starting their own firm?
I probably wish I had done a little bit more due diligence before I did it. It was impulsive, but so I think it might have been a smoother ride if I'd figured out a few more things before I started, because I was opening a bank account in a hurry because we didn't have a trust account and clients were ready to pay me, and I just didn't have anywhere to put the money. So like very, very basic things like that I hadn't laid the groundwork for before I started, that it wouldn't have taken a whole lot of thought or effort to at least have in place. I think so. One thing that I started doing very quickly and that was helpful was just ask for help, reach out, like surround yourself with people who are doing this, have done this, are willing to lend a hand and lend advice. As a perpetual associate, most of my career I had been really cloistered. I was just in the office. I went to occasional, like ALA, the Immigration Lawyers Association. I'd go to occasional events, and I knew a few people there and would say hi, but I didn't have a very strong network within the immigration sphere or outside of it. And so jumping in, realizing I was out of my depth, and needing to figure it out quickly forced me to just build a network very fast. And so I think if you don't have one, start thinking about that right away, because it's been invaluable to see what others are doing, what mistakes others are making, how they figured things out has been huge.
A lot of our members have consumer-facing practices, and I know you certainly do, but you also have part of your practice that is sort of more working with companies and corporate stuff. And so a lot of the things that we talk about in Max Law might not necessarily apply. And so sometimes people get frustrated with Tyson and I that we don't have more advice for people like that. So what tips do you have for people that sort of spend a lot of their energy working with corporate clients or repeat clients like that?
A lot of what you guys talk about is video and social media and putting stuff out there and those types of channels. And so I dipped my toes into that and didn't have much traction. And then one thing I got out of the last mastermind I was in was why don't you try LinkedIn? And I hadn't really given it much thought. And so, and that's been huge. Just in a few months, we've had a really good response. And so I guess, a lot of what Max Law is about, it is applicable to a corporate practice. It's just pick your platform, I guess. Know where the people you're trying to target are actually circulating. Spend your efforts there. A lot more of my business development is still networking. I think a lot of the kind of mass outreach type of marketing we do it, and we still have a lot of ways to go there, but it's a lot more about relationships.
All right, so I want to ask you a related question, because a lot of Jim and I do get some pushback, like with the B2B people, where we're different, and I wonder, like, I want your honest opinion, like, do you feel like you all are different, or do you think that many of the principles are the same? I'm super curious what you think.
I'm still navigating that. So, for example, intake. Intake is a puzzle that we haven't fully figured out yet. So with like the whole Gary Falkowitz and the whole thing about not charging for the consults, and a lot of this is it's not applicable for the types of relationships that we're building, because a lot of our corporate clients, they don't have a case they need help immediately with. It's more of they want help about how do we set up an immigration program at our firm, and that's something that we're going to charge hourly for off the bat. And so the dynamics are different. So intake, for example, the mold you guys have set out doesn't fully fit us, right? So I'll report back once we do figure out something workable, but that other parts of it are, I think, a pretty close fit. When I think that the systems and money and all those things, they work the same at a consumer facing firm and at a corporate firm, right? But it's intake is I think is very different. And to give you a concrete example, so we in theory charge for consultations, but I also waive a ton of them, but it really just depends on who's referring it. I just kind of at this point have a it when you see it sort of feel for when this is going to be. Definitely the $250 I'm going to make out of this are nothing compared to what this relationship is going to be worth, even if they don't hire us, but just because I want to know this person, because they're going to not hire us, but they will refer us to others, right? And so figuring out how to translate those sorts of assessments to a system that intake staff can follow is a nut I haven't cracked yet.
You are on the precipice of hiring an associate, and I'm wondering what were the mental gymnastics you had to go through to finally make the decision to do that, and what are you looking for as you go through this process? I
think it in the back of my mind, I've known I had to for a while now. Two things that pushed us over the edge were a good chunk of our revenue is seasonal and comes in at the end of the year. So we wrapped up last year having money in the bank that would let us absorb that salary even in the first few months that it'll take to get this associate situated. That confidence. And then the other is...
Are you tired of the marketing guessing game? Does your website feel more like a digital billboard than a client magnet? If you're nodding along, you're not alone. And it's time to stop the uncertainty and start getting real results. Let's talk about your marketing spend. Are you just shelling out money every month and crossing your fingers? Do you ever wonder what impact your marketing is really having on your revenue? Well, it's time to take the guesswork out of the equation with Rise Up Media. We've been working with them for over a year, and the feedback from our fellow members has been fantastic. Rise Up Media is here to take your marketing to the next level. They'll even perform a full audit of your online presence, giving you the good, the bad, and even let you in on what your competition is up to that you're missing out on. And the best part, there's no obligation, no catch, no pressure. If you decide to work with them, their contracts are month to month. That's right. No long-term commitments tying you down. So what are you waiting for? To learn more about how Rise Up Media can transform your firms, visit riseupmedia.com/MaxLaw, and Rise is spelled with a Z. riseupmedia.com/MaxLaw.
Okay, so I opened the firm in early 2022. The first year went well, but it was just by the seat of my pants. And so I started 2023 with the idea that I don't want to grow, or at least not grow much, but I want to just buckle down and actually figure out systems and processes and get ourselves very organized before we are ready to push and grow some more. And 2023 went by without any of that happening because I was spending so much of my time working in the cases. Looking back at 2023 and evaluating why that goal didn't end up happening, I realized, okay, we're never going to be able to grow and get organized unless somebody else is handling a good chunk of the casework and I have time to work on the business.
Do you have an idea as to what you want the firm to actually look like? I mean, because you're at the sort of the beginning stages of hiring. So do you have like an idea in mind? Like, okay, I want it to look like this. I want it to be in this number of locations. I want us to operate, hybrid, in person, virtual. I mean, have you thought about that? How you want it to look?
I want to grow just enough that there's some redundancy, that I can take time off and there's people who can take care of things. And if somebody's out, they have coverage. And it's not just one person in each seat. And if somebody's gone, everybody has to jump in and panic. But about that much, I don't want our firm to get huge, really. So that's our kind of very fuzzy growth target. So maybe a couple of associates, maybe 50% to twice as much support staff as we have now, and that's about it. We're at 5 full-time, 2 part-time right now, so somewhere bigger than that, but not a ton bigger. I started out with the idea that we were going to be 100% virtual. The immigration agencies have foiled us in that because they love getting these giant bricks of paper, these substantial volumes. And so having a multifunction copier in my living room was really getting old. And it was my wife printing everything out. And then if we weren't home, then I couldn't have staff coming to my house to print out stuff, right? Or expect them to have a huge multifunction copier in their living room. So that has forced us to have a brick and mortar presence, even if it's a small one, right? For now, just to get the cases out and scan the stuff that comes in. But the vision when I started out was to be able to, I mean, we're in Miami. I've been in Miami for about 6 years now, and I've lived here on and off my whole life. I'm a Spanish citizen as well, and also a Guatemalan citizen. And the idea was be completely virtual, so that if we want to go back home to Guatemala and our son, who's two and a half, have him go to school down there for a couple of years and spend time with his grandma and his cousins, that we can do that, right? Or if we want to try our hand at living in Spain for a couple of years, that we can do that. And business immigration facilitates that because there's not a huge in-person requirement. In-person interviews at USCIS are occasional. There's no court work. So that's where we want to eventually end up.
Jose, what stresses you out?
Everything. I'm a very tightly wound person. One thing that I've struggled with from the start, and I still do, is I get excited about things. And so one of the things that prompted me to start the firm was that I thought very a lot of things were very cool to me, and I wanted to try them in my practice, outside of my practice, and I wanted to have the freedom to do that. And so I have a tendency to jump in and try this and try that, and it's worked in terms of like our growth, right? Like we decided to get into traveling to Latin America to do speaking engagements and conferences, and suddenly we're putting together conferences on our own. And it was just kind of this would be fun sort of idea, and it's worked out. And now I'm advising a legal tech startup, and that's building on a platform to build exceptionability cases using AI. And that's been a lot of fun. And all that's well and good, but it means that our operations are kind of haphazard because I have a hard time systematizing. And that stresses, like that's of my own making, but it stresses me out to not have predictability as to who's handling what and how they're handling it, and everything's just kind of as it comes right now. And if anybody who's spoken to me at length about my practice and knows that this is just my struggle, right? That this is the thing that we struggle the most in at my firm.
Have you considered maybe hiring someone to help you with that part of it, since you struggle so much with it?
I've considered it. It's something that the project of training myself to actually participate in building that out at the firm it's a personal goal that I'm excited about, and I want to try out before I say I failed and I want to hire somebody else at it. Just because, I don't know, this has been a fun ride so far, just building all these muscles I didn't know I had, and this is one of them, right? So, it's like, at some point when I was in high school, I tried skateboarding and I sucked at it, but all my friends did it, and I had to try it, and I had to fall on my ass a few times before I realized, okay, maybe this is not my sport. So kind of it's less fun than skateboarding, but this is, something I want to try before I delegate out.
I too tried to become a skateboarder and failed miserably at it. So I'm right there with you. I could see Jimmy on a skateboard.
I'm bad at most sports. It turns out I don't have depth perception. I didn't find that out until I was like 18, but it explains so much because you throw a ball, a set of keys at me, and I'm just kind of flailing around. I figured it out when I was taking flying lessons, and when I was going to get my pilot's license, they gave us a test to test depth perception, and it explained why I was good at taking off and navigating the plane, but not so much as landing it. Because fun fact.
Interesting. So how did you how did you make the decision to join the guild, and what were you looking for when you decided to do that?
Like I said, it was kind of drinking through a fire hose when I started out, and so I just started looking for resources wherever I could find them. I can't remember if I came across the podcast first or the big group on Facebook, but found one or the other, and then that was helpful, and I just kind of lurked in the group and listened to the podcast and found it valuable and jumped in. At the same time, I was also joining a coaching program, and I was also joining other groups, and so I was just finding help wherever I needed it. And this is one. So Max Law is one of the things that just stuck, that clicked with me, and I found helpful. And I just liked I liked the people who participate in Max Law.
Yeah, I mean, like that's my favorite part too. Like, there's just like a lot of great people. Just, they're so willing to share. They're like they're sharers. It's great. So, very good. All right, Jose, we are getting close to time, so I do want to be respectful of your time. I'm going to wrap things up. Before I do, I want to remind everyone, if you want to join us in the guild with people like Jose, who are fantastic, go to maxlawguild.com. We'd love to have you there. Just a lot of great people, a lot of great business owners that are sharing all of their best tips and secrets, which is awesome. And if you're not quite ready, join us in the big Facebook group. Just search Maximum Lawyer and you'll be able to find us there. And if you've gotten something from this episode or from any of the other episodes, if you don't mind giving us a 5-star review, we would greatly appreciate it. Let's get to our tips and hacks of the week. Jimmy, what's your hack of the week?
Back in 2022, one of the greatest baseball players I'll ever see in my life retired. His name was Mr. Albert Pujols, El Hombre. Albert Pujols had a very, very long career. He's going straight to the Hall of Fame when he's done. His batting average, 296. 296. That means he got a hit less than 3 times out of 10. And I bring that up because I keep seeing people thinking that they have to get hiring 100% right every time. And I really want to push back on this idea that you're going to get hiring right every time. And I think that the real lesson is each time you hire someone, if it works out, write down why it worked out. If it didn't work out, write down why it didn't work out. And then each time you go through the hiring process, do things a little bit differently. If you do it the exact same way every time, you're going to get the same result. But if you look at hiring the way that you ideate with software and look at it as, how do I keep getting better at this skill? How do I develop this muscle more? Instead of hiring becomes such a roadblock for so many of our members and such a scary, scary thing. It's not that hard. Just think of it as an experiment. Don't beat yourself up over bad hires. Just figure out, how can I do better next time?
I like that. That's good. It's an experiment. Very good. Jose, you are next. By now, you should know that you should have a tip or hack ready for us. What you got for us?
So I have a huge stack of books that I've been wanting to read, and I can't get through them because the hours are long, and then at home we have a toddler who demands attention. And this one's from Benjamin Hardy, the guy, what is it, 10? How many X is easier than however many other X? 10X and 2X, I think. Yeah, there you go. And he had this layered approach to audiobooks and then physical books where it was on his podcast, and it was like how I read some insane amount of books a year. And it was first listen to the audio book, and so as you're listening to it, half of them, he said, within the first 20 minutes I realized this isn't even worth my background noise time, and so it's out, and I didn't waste time trying to read that book. Then others, I listen through it and I just kind of absorb at a surface level. And then the ones that I find really, really potentially valuable, I sit down and read and actually highlight and take notes and so forth, because his point was, if I try to read all of them, then it's a lot slower, and I'm taking notes on stuff that might not be all that valuable. So it's kind of this culling process, right? That starts with the audiobook and then going back to so I tried it this month, and I already got through 3 books that had been on the waiting list for months and months and months. So it's working for me.
I like that a lot. I'm going to steal that because there are a lot of books where I force myself to finish them. I'm like, oh, gosh, this is why? Just because you do get the gist of it in the first third. So very good. All right. So here's my tip of the week. So I'd mentioned a book on the podcast before about storytelling, but I bought this game. It's called The Moth Presents a Game of Storytelling. The writer of that book that I mentioned before, he'd spoken at the Moth quite a bit. I actually don't play the game, but I like the cards inside of it. So they're very thought provoking. They're really good conversation starters, or they're really good, questions you could ask on the podcast. There's a lot of things you could do, or you can also practice your storytelling. Like, for example, I just picked a random card, like the one side says food. Prepare a story about things you eat, victuals, grub, cuisine, groceries, and it gives you some things that you could use to talk about. And then on the other side, it says, tell us about a time you bit off more than you could chew, a time you cooked up something special, a time when food soothed your soul. So it's just kind of a cool, it's something to help get you thinking creatively. So you could play the game. I've never played the game. I don't even know how to play the game. I like it just specifically for the ways it gets you thinking about different things, and also gives you different questions you could ask people. So I think it's pretty cool. Good conversation starters. So if you want, if you're doing a bunch of networking and you want some conversation starters, it would actually be pretty helpful for you. But Jose, thank you so much. Really appreciate you sharing your story and coming on and being an amazing guild member. And we love seeing you grow and all the awesome things you're doing. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. To stay in contact with your host and to access more content, go to MaximumLawyer.com. Have a great week and catch you next time.
Before you go, have you heard Jim and Tyson talk about the Guild on the podcast or in the Facebook group? If not, you're missing out on some really exciting things happening with Guild members and their law firms. The Guild includes a community, accountability, trainings, group coaching, and in-person events like our quarterly masterminds. Inside, you'll gain support, tap into a network of connections, and continue learning, a common theme among successful entrepreneurs. Investing in a community is like the self-care of business ownership. Surrounding yourself with other people who get it is crucial when you're creating a rock-solid foundation to build your business on, one that's strong enough to withstand setbacks, transitions, and growth. So head to MaximumLawyer.com/the Guild to join now and get started today.